PodcastOne presents the Steve Austin Show Classics.
I'm still sitting here with Mick Foley, so I needed to weigh in, and that was it. When we last left off last week, we were going to talk about promos, ECW, and all that stuff, and we're going to get to it. But I first wanted to address something in the current scheme of things, Mick, because I know you still watch the show today.
Yep.
And I know you're particularly fond of a talent, Daniel Bryan.
Yeah.
Very talented cat, myself as well. Love what he does inside the squared circle. He's kind of been put on the shelf right now. He had a neck injury, had some surgery, and word on the street is he's got another surgery coming up. I guess he's got some issues with his arm or whatever. I'm not a doctor, don't know the bottom line on it. But, man, your thoughts on that guy? He's worked his ass off to get to this point, a smaller guy, you know, with a hell of a damn. He's one of the best workers in the business when he's healthy and now on the sidelines. And he just came in to good money at top guy status. You know anything about his condition? What are your thoughts? Because you were very vocal when they were kind of had him on the – they were teeter-tottering. What do we do with this guy? Is he over on the internet or is he over? And I was thinking the kid's over. The kid's over. You were too. So you were behind the Daniel Bryan cause.
I
Pull
was.
the trigger on him. Put the belt on him at Mania. Let's go.
And I don't know for a fact that my opinion, changed anybody else's, but I know they were reading everything that I wrote. That was the one time, and we were talking about last week, I didn't complain about every paycheck. It was a rarity. It was regular enough that they knew that there would be a phone call if I got something I thought was light. But I very rarely weigh in on content. I especially when I was a paid ambassador, and by and large, I did enjoy the product. Like if I wrote a post, the famous tweet was following the Royal Rumble was, and I don't even remember writing it. I know it's mine.
Right.
I don't remember what I was thinking when I sent out. Does at WWE hate its own fans? I've never been so disgusted after a PPV. And apparently I was voicing what was on a lot of people's minds because my son said, Dad, you know how many retweets you got? Not to turn this into a tech fest, but
go ahead.
The most I'd ever gotten was when the King had the heart attack on live TV, and I'd sent out a very earnest prayer, and I got about 2,500 retweets. And I thought that was probably in the territory. And he goes, no, 16,000.
Wow.
I went up, I think, to like 25,000. Like I was in Justin Bieber territory all of a sudden. Because I was echoing what was on a lot of people's minds, and probably on the minds of a lot of the guys, too, who, weren't in a position to say anything. And I also, I reached out to the three guys that I thought had been most grievously harmed that night, and that was Ziggler, Punk, and Daniel. I'm a glass half full guy. So the glass half full is that my kids looked on in amazement as these top guys in the company got back to me within like minutes, and they're like, Dad, like why do they respond so quickly to you? And I said, you don't know? And he said, no. I said, because I'm Mick fucking Foley. Boom! You see what I did there? Stole it, man.
Inside joke between me and Mick. God damn it, kid. Last week he was Cactus fucking Jack. This week is Mick fucking Foley.
But I was real adamant about it. I love the product.
Right.
Well,
I know. Hey, but see, here's the thing. My time has come and gone. Yours has too.
Yeah.
But I still reserve the right to voice my opinion and be passionate about the product because I care about today's guys and gals, and I care about the system.
Yeah.
So I'm not bitter at all, but I am passionate, and I still love the business. So I want to voice my concerns. I just don't, and you don't. We don't want to come off as craggy, bitter, just mad at the world.
Yeah.
Because we're not.
No.
The glass is half full. Some of it's damn near full, in my opinion.
Even I'm going through a strained period with WWE, and I'm seriously looking at it like this is a moment. This is
How strained is it? What's strained?
Pretty strained.
Y'all pull a hamstring?
Strained enough so that even when I was in Boston and offered to do pre or post show and 10 minutes away. Do my own show, which had been booked months earlier. They didn't get back. Mark Carrano said, I'll check and see. They didn't get back to me. And so I just thought, you know what, let's take some time away. You know, maybe I'll have to miss this Thanksgiving. You know, maybe there'll be a WrestleMania that'll pass. But I don't in any way see, like, the door being shut. You know, like, back when I thought it was shut, I got a call from Vince, you know. We hadn't talked in a year and a half, and he said, I know you don't like me, but I know you love this company. And I called him back, and I got that voice, and you can't help but laugh. And the first thing I said was, I like you. And I know there's going to come another call like that. Like, I don't in any way think WWE is my home, and I'm away for a little while. I'll go back. But in the meantime, you know, what I say, I have it on good authority that what I say is listened to, is measured out. That night in question, you know, I told, I didn't have Daniel's cell, so I conveniently reached out to Bree. You know, it's funny because
so you had Bree's cell, but not Daniel's. That makes total sense. It's his wife.
But she's a great.
When you can pop Mick Foley, you can pop anybody.
I should just ask her for Daniel's number. You know, I guess I could.
See what he did, folks? The kid stole it.
But I you know, the Daniel Bryan Kane thing, hug it out, began as a rib on Daniel because he's not a hugger. You know, like even you and I, we bro it out a little bit. But you'll see Daniel, and specifically, like the divas will go up and extend a hand. And I asked him, and he goes, I don't hug. And then I'm watching TV a couple months later, and he's doing this thing that's based around two guys hugging each other. Like, it's a rib, you know.
Right.
It's a rib on Daniel that ended up being big money and catapulted him, put, another just great year under Kane's belt. And so I said to Bree, I said, I know Daniel's not a hugger, but if I was here, I told her I'm going to reach out, to the three people, Hunter, Stephanie, Vince, and tell them how wrong this whole thing is. And then I texted her back and I said, I just got a cell phone, didn't really know the ins and outs of it, didn't know copying and pasting. And I said, I know Daniel's not a hugger, but tell him if I was there, I'd give him a big hug and tell him how messed up this whole thing is. And then I handed the phone to my son to try to do the copying and pasting. He goes, Dad, you just sent that to Vince McMahon. And I hadn't texted Vince in about a year. So my first text to Vince was, I'd give Daniel Bryan a hug. And my second text was, oops.
Are you kidding me?
No, I swear to you.
Jesus Christ.
I may even, while we talk, I'll see if I still have that on the Foley
You're a
record.
Moron.
And I did.
Boy, you told him.
Oh, boy, yeah. I did reach out to Hunter, and I reached out to Stephanie. Hunter got back to me, and he said, Mick, as an author, you should know not to judge a book, until the story's over. Yeah. And the funny thing about Stephanie, and I've known Stephanie, since she was, a teenager in college.
Yeah, when we first got there, you got there.
She told me the story of how we first met. It was the night of the cell. And now it can be told because Pat Patterson has revealed it on
Legends House.
Legends House. Pat had a longtime partner who passed away that night. And Stephanie remembers being, I think, 19 or 20 years old. This is after my cell match. Francois kind of patched me together. I hobble over before the world's most awkward run-in on your match.
Let me break into this story. I want to get into this later. We'll get into it right now. Dude, I got so much respect for you. You went through that Hell in a Cell match. Yourself and The Undertaker was a semi-main. It was me and Kane in the main event in the First Blood match. Now, 4 days earlier, I had wrestled you at the Houston Summit. We were on top. Place was sold out. Coming out of that match, I couldn't stop shaking. I got whatever you call it, chills. They took me to the hospital. I had a staph infection. Okay. My mom and dad had drove 100 miles from Edna, Texas to watch me wrestle your ass that night. Thank God I was lucky enough to go over. And these days, as we speak now, Joel Osteen's packing them in every Sunday night doing his ministry gimmick over there. But anyway, you and me working on top. I spent 3 days at Herman Hospital. IVs, getting antibiotics put into my system. My elbow was swollen up. Badass staph infection. Had to wrestle you in a pay-per-view. Hell in a Cell. First Blood match. And, man, you and Undertaker went out there and just ripped it up. And a great story, great bumps. Just y'all stole the show from us.
Yeah,
well, you can't follow that. But my point is, after all the devastation you had sustained in that match, here you come. And I always tell his people, I say, here comes that stupid-ass Jack running out, because you got to take a stunner. And I meant that with respect.
Yeah.
Here
I appreciate
comes Jack running out there, kind of sideways like John Wayne, like a crab. And all the stuff, I mean, dude, those bumps you took, that one where you almost drove your head in the mat, had you turned your shoulder, it was just a fluke that you didn't get killed. But here you come after all that bullshit that you had just went through, all those bumps, the thumbtacks, to take a stunner from my ass for me to feed into the chair to get the color from a taker. But I'll never forget that. Now, y'all stole the show, hands down, more power to you. But I just respected the shit out of you for running down and taking a stunner. And we got to get back to your story.
In retrospect, that's probably one of those things that we should have changed.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they went to you and got, Steve, given what Mick's been through, like, we're not going to send him back. I think everyone would have been understanding of that. But
you know what? You're so right, but we didn't think like that back then.
No, and we didn't. And I've mentioned, this was more last year's show. I was talking about the irony. Professional wrestling is, it's the sport that, most people there are wrestling fans that go to my shows. I say everybody's been mocked or derided a time or two for watching that fake sport, the show business sport. I said, but, you walk up to the most ardent MMA enthusiast and say, hey, man, does your sport continue when one of the participants is no longer conscious?
Yeah.
His mind does.
Yeah.
And then, the fun of it is, like, you can play with the words 100 different ways, and I'll do it like, we didn't stop matches. And if I'm feeling good, we didn't stop matches. We bought time. The idea. And you can almost picture Vince behind the curtain going, buy him some time.
Yeah.
And so the emotions of the match is trying to piece together this outcome, get to the desired outcome when one of the guys is no longer conscious. And I think that's, where the drama of it comes in. But let me go back to Stephanie.
Yeah, back to the story at hand. Sorry, I had to interject.
I find out in between being patched up and making the world's most awkward run-in, Pat Patterson's partner has passed away. And I went to the office he was in. He was beside himself, and I gave him a hug. And I don't remember this. And Stephanie says, I saw her out of the corner of my eye, and I gave her a little crooked smile. That was how we met. And here is the text. I was copying and pasting, and it said, thence, thence, it's Mick Foley. As you know, I don't reach out to you too often, but I think the company's making a big mistake by not giving people what they want in Daniel Bryan. Then I think I'm texting Bree, and I say, I think I copying and pasting the message. I said, that was my message to Vince, even though I misspelled his name. I know Brian is not a hugger, but tell him I would give him one now if I could. I'll leave you guys alone now, but I just wanted you to know how I felt and how wrong I think it is, and then you read that yourself.
Vince, as you might have known, that last message was not meant for you. Let me read that without fucking it up. So here's the text to Vince where Mick's trying to make it right. Vince, as you might have known, that last message was not meant for you. ... Mick. Dude, see, this is the kind of shit when you and me and Brian Pillman were traveling. It was ridiculous. When we started off this podcast last week, I left off. I wanted to start talking about promos, but since we're talking about the current situation, we just talking about
I
Daniel
never gave
Bryan.
an answer about Daniel.
Yeah, I know. I'm waiting to hear it. You keep putting me off.
Here's a kid. I mean, I remember going to him because at one point he was contemplating leaving the wrestling business to join the Peace Corps. And he said, wrestling's important, but so is making a difference. And I remember, not knowing him that well. I knew him a little bit from Ring of Honor. And to be honest, and I've admitted this, like I went to bat for a couple guys, Punk, Samoa Joe, and Homicide, who I thought
I'm a big Samoa Joe fan, too.
Yeah, they just didn't see that. I think one of the things Punk had going for him was that Ricky Steamboat was going to bat for him, too.
Right.
And I have to think that both me and Ricky come from exact opposite sides of the wrestling spectrum, both pitching for the same guy, may have helped his cause out a little bit. But Daniel was a guy, Brian Danielson was a guy, I knew he was a great talent. I didn't see him as a WWE guy, so I missed the boat on him. I wouldn't have predicted that for him. But he's a good, he's a really good. I don't want a young man. He's a good guy.
Good dude.
He's got a good heart. And I went up to him and I said, I heard you were contemplating, leaving the business, to make a difference. And I said, if I can suggest something, try to get as far as you can in this business and then go out and make a bigger difference. And I wouldn't be surprised, knowing the way that he lives, if the money that he did make in that short run on top, and knowing that his wife is not someone who needs a lot, that breathes. It was funny because even when I couldn't tell them apart physically, I knew that one of them, I knew there was vast differences between the two of them. And when I reach out, I said, just make sure he's okay. The business will roll on. They'll find a way to make it work, but you only get that one shot. I hope he comes back, but I hope he doesn't come back until he's fully healed. And I think that spot will still be there. I mean, he's going to have to fight for it.
Going to have to fight for it, but and also just the crowd moving along as it has. Sometimes just the window can slide closed a little bit.
Steve, one thing sometimes I'll drive down the road and I'll wonder, why was that window so open for me? You have J.J. Dillon. I call him J.J. effing Dillon in my book, which was really out of frustration towards Vince, because J.J. was the guy who would get on the phone with me once a year and in less than 20 seconds tell me the company wasn't looking for talent. And then I'd turn on Raw and I'd see Mantar and and I was like,
what are you saying, Mantar wasn't a great gimmick?
And JJ, he phrased it particularly well, in that it was almost like he.
And this is when JJ was running talent relations at WWF.
But when he wrote his book, he said that Mick was fortunate to have been near the top of that wave, or it was like he was calling me out on the fact that I benefited from the era I was in. And that, there was this huge wave. And I just said a couple of days ago, all right, I wasn't Richie or Fonzie. And you can argue among yourselves whether you or The Rock was Rich. But you were the main guys. But everyone remembers Anson Williams, and Donnie Most because they were the sidekicks. Yeah. They never starred in their own show, but they were, but they were over because they were there with with Richie and the Fonz, and that's the way. I never saw myself as being at the top of the wave, but when that thing crashed down, it was like I didn't understand that everyone would remember that era we were in so well.
But you brought in two names a while ago when we were talking
Potsy
about
and Ralph?
Daniel Bryan. No, we ain't gonna talk about those guys. You brought up Ziggler and Punk. Let's talk about Punk because he's gone.
Yeah.
Will he come back? Can he come back? Does he want to come back? Does he give a shit?
I don't know. Everyone comes back. If there's an exception to the rule, it would be him. But the secret for Punk, and I honestly, I haven't talked to him. The last time I had an interaction with him was the night of the Rumble, and he said he might not be back, and he didn't show up. He's got to find something he loves as much as this, because it's really hard to replace. I don't know if he's got that in his life. He doesn't need to come back. He's made all the money he's ever going to need. I don't know if he's going to get the itch. You don't get to be as good as Punk was without loving it. And if you love it, there's really only one place to be.
There.
Yeah, there. Unless he wants to just be the guy who makes an absolute killing on the independent scene and working comic book conventions and making a handsome living that way.
Interesting spot that he's in. Because are you totally fed up with the way things are being done that you remove yourself from the whole picture? Because if it's what you love, and I know he loves the business, I'm not speaking for him, I hadn't talked to him in a year. Yeah. How do you take yourself out of the equation? I did, when I got a gut full and took my ball and went home. I've talked about that a million times. So, but, Jim Ross sent me a card in the mail, and I jumped at the chance to come back and, get it while I could. You got to make hay while the sun shines. He ain't making hay right now. You can only make hay so long.
I don't believe I've ever shared this. When I was about, I was making the decision to do the thing with Ambrose before the doctors stepped in and told me that I'd had my last match. And that grassroots thing was really resonating with the top guys in the company. Punk, Cena, they liked it. It was different. And Punk wanted to be a part of it. And I remember parking outside an arena and texting him. And I said, how I didn't know exactly how old he was. He was 12 years younger than me. I said, 12 years from now, do you envision yourself coming back after a 3-year layoff to do a segment that is intentionally bad, referring to me coming back to do the This Is Your Life John Cena spot? And he said, no. And I said, well, that will give you some indication of how far I've fallen from my ideals.
Right.
And I will always regret that I let myself, that I let myself fall that far, and that I didn't stand up and fight that one. As I get the call, it is a pretty unusual idea. And under other circumstances, if I'd been back a while, I would have been glad to have done a segment that was purposely bad. If I remember correctly, I would go out there and say, watch this, Steve. And then I would tank an interview just so you could tell me Jock Lanza's, reaction backstage. Yeah. And you come back and you go, that was awful. I know, it was a masterpiece. But my first time back to be in a segment that was intentionally bad was a real... It was a real blow to everything that I thought I had stood for. And I remember Punk, saying he wouldn't be that guy.
Right.
And I don't know if he's going to come back if it's less than ideal. And if he does come back, if he becomes that guy he hated,
Right.
If he becomes that part-time guy collecting the big check, then he gets the last laugh, but he does it at the expense of his ideals. Pretty heavy stuff for a wrestling
God dang. Look, before we talk about promos, which I said we were going to talk about 20 minutes ago, you brought up one other name, Ziggler. Talented cat. Your thoughts on him? You like him, right?
I do like him. I don't know. You know what, Steve? I think Dolph, it's a different world, with all the honesty and the internet, and, you kind of shoot straight with your fans. And I don't know sometimes if he knows where to draw the line between the character and the guy. And somebody said, watch at Real Mick Foley's expression. And this was at the Comic-Con probably 2 years ago. Or maybe it was a year ago. It was a year. And Dolph, they asked how you move up the card. And he goes, well, you try to work your best with this guy. You try to have the best match you get with this guy. And then maybe end up taking John Cena's 5 moves. And the expression I went was the, ooh.
Yeah.
And it's like, don't. You do, and it's not that John's a vindictive guy, but no top guy likes to be spoken of that way.
Right.
And I believe you may have had an issue if one of the guys on the ladder had spoken of you that way.
Well, it's true. I only had about 3 or 4 moves, not even 5. So, giving Cena credit for 5 is an incredible compliment. Yeah. So, see, I don't think you want to speak like that. And speaking of John, dude, that guy's had a hellacious run. And he's probably still right in the middle of it. I think he got another 5-6 years left in him. And he's going to go down as one of the greatest champions of all time. And that's a straight-up shoot from Steve Austin. So I got nothing but respect for him. But with Ziggler, I don't really know what or who a Dolph Ziggler is. And I've talked to him at a couple of the functions and Make-A-Wish things at L.A. a couple of years ago when WWE came to town. And I like the guy. I love his work. I'd like to see him a little more physical in the ring. I'd like to see him establish a go-to hold. Yeah. I'd like to see a little bit more offense from him. And I don't mean offense in the vein of a high spot, offense in working an arm and punishing a guy. Yeah, your job as a babyface, heel's going to make you look good. You shine, maybe out wrestle him, get a little bit of heat, feel sorry for him. You come back, high spot or 2, go home, and it is what it is, where the finish is. But he just needs to establish himself a little bit more and be a little bit more dominant in the ring. And, a con hair stronger, I dare say. Yeah, you heard it, Mick, a con hair stronger. I can say that on the Steve Austin Show Unleashed because that's what it is. No, your thoughts on my critique?
I like your viewpoint. I think as wonderful as he is in the ring, there is the sense that he is going to put on a great show every night. And I think sometimes you need to be able to suspend disbelief to where you understand you're not watching a great show. I think he would have gotten there. He was on the right road, and somebody pulled the plug.
Sometimes Jack check I call Jack Mick. I mean, Mick, right. Jack, whatever. I mean, goddamn, we've known each other for, 93, 4?
89?
Well, I mean, 89, but then we started traveling together.
Yeah, 90.
But it's a real interesting story. I guess DDP, someone, maybe Jake told me the story, but when Jake was brought in to WWF by Vince, and Jake's going out, he's trying to have good matches with everybody. Right? You think that's the right thing to do. Have a good match with everybody. He wasn't getting over. Finally, Vince pulls him aside and says, what are you doing? Jake says, what do you mean? Trying to have good matches. He goes, I didn't bring you in here to get good matches out of you. I brought you in to get over. Meaning you got to get over, then go have those good matches with everybody.
Yeah.
Because then you can draw some money. Well, and sometimes, I mean, that's a road that I never really had to go down, and everybody finds their way a different way. And I think it's going to be from him taking more than giving more in the ring. And sometimes, I mean, it's a 50-50, a 60-40, 70-30. You can place a percentage on it.
One of the most uncomfortable matches I ever had, and Sean Waltman will tell you the same thing.
And they're hard matches.
Is when I thought I needed to look strong to work with Hunter, and he wanted to have a good match. And it was like, I like this guy. I respect this guy. I completely understand where he's coming from, but I strongly feel like I need this. And it's really hard. It's hard to.
It is if you don't have that in your personality, and I don't. I hate to be a selfish guy in the ring, but sometimes you just gotta. And sometimes you need that agent to step in and say, you know what, here's what we need. And this is a conversation we had last week when the weight got taken off your shoulders and mine to ride off in the sunset. Yeah. Sometimes you need that agent to just come in and say, look, you and I, hey, listen, Mick, we need Steve at about 70-80% in this match. You understand? And that leaves you 20 to 30.
I remember when Jerry Briscoe was there for me when I debuted the day after WrestleMania with Bob Holly. And Bob's a tough son of a gun.
Yep.
And Bob wanted to get his stuff in. And Jerry was there to let Bob know that I had to get over, I needed to get over. And I told him I would gladly repay him at another time. That's what I was saying, not a knock on Sean. It's just saying, when you're up there, you have these very difficult decisions to make, and sometimes you need to look good. One of the biggest moments, defining moment in my career took place in Japan when I had Shoji Nakamaki underneath.
Say that 3 times fast.
Shoji Nakamaki, known to ICP fans as Lama Namanumi. I had him.
Say that 5 times fast.
Lama Namanumi. And I had him underneath the bed of nails, and I knew I was going to drop an elbow on him. And it's my instinct as a pretty kind and benevolent human being to take care of the man underneath that bed of nails. And I just had this, it was like the scene in Animal House with the devil and the angel. The angel is saying, don't you dare drop that elbow as hard as you can. And the devil pops up, you're going to make this son of a bitch look good. And it was like a moment, just remember, I didn't think I had a sadistic bone in my body, and I came down pretty hard with that elbow, and I heard him screaming underneath those nails.
Was he screaming or just selling?
He was screaming. It was caught in his head. He was trying to dig nails out of his head. And I just remember thinking, that's pretty cool. And I didn't know I had that. I really didn't know I had that. And I made it a point when I wrestled Randy Orton in 2004 to find those matches in Japan, and I cut the promo where it wasn't that match. It was specifically a different match where Rick Patterson, big guy from Edmonton, had it was either Nakamaki or Ono, another one of the baby faces there for IWA Japan, in a backbreaker, and I had that barbed wire wrapped around my arm, and I came off with that elbow, and Patterson, gave him the little flip, and it looked like dynamite. And I looked up at that camera and gave it the bang bang, and when I saw that, I'd watch it back and I'd rewind it, and I'd be like, on the surface, I would tell myself, I'm here in IWA Japan because I'm a father with 2 kids and I have a mortgage to pay. But I'd watch that back and I'd be like, there's part of me that does not hate being here. There's part of me that really thrives on being here, not just taking the punishment, but giving it out a little bit. And when I came back to WWE, I had that experience, and I knew what it felt like, and I knew what was necessary to get over. And I was able to use those lessons and that experience and to assert myself in those situations when I needed to get over, And I'm being honest, no one's got the great Mick Foley badass story. There's no stories about me taking on 8 guys in a bar, you know. But I would stand up for what I thought was right, and I would risk taking a beating for it. You know, if I thought it was right for business, I would gladly stick up for my right to look good in that ring.
Can Dolph Ziggler get over?
Yes. He just needs someone to believe in him and give him the chance and state the goals cleanly. If say you were in that dressing room, say for 2 weeks they make you his agent, and you spell it out to him.
Right.
If he's listening to this podcast,
right,
and it would hurt me because I like Dolph. And Dolph, like as an entertainer, Dolph goes on his off nights and does comedy, unpaid, unbilled guest sets. Like he's going to be good at everything he does, whether it's amateur wrestling and building up that stellar career or having matches that are state of the art in our business. But when my 11-year-old goes, this is a great match, but Dolph Ziggler is going to lose because he's Dolph Ziggler, there's a problem.
Right.
And I think if he was able, honestly, he needs somebody to be willing to put that plug back in and give him
I think it's a bit more offense. I think it's establishing not just one go-to hold, but just establishing a hold. One time we were going down the road. We're going to take a break right after this. We're going to talk about promos. One more story from the road. Myself and Paul Orndorff, Mr. Wonderful, used to travel down the road in WCW for a period of time. And he had worked with Paul Roma that night. Before, I guess, they put them in a tag team together. A pretty good tag team. But anyway, there they were working a single. And Paul Roma's a very athletic guy, good drop kick, arm drag, can work. And of course, Paul Orndorff, always gets good heat, shine a guy up, just trademark, straight ahead, good hand.
Yeah. Heel
or baby, better as a heel. And then I tell you what, I saw him grab a damn arm bar on Paul Roma, and he just stood over him. Paul was seated. Paul Roma was seated. Paul Orndorff was standing, good deep arm bar, and just pulling on that arm, and it just represented power. It was a house show. The lights were what they were, so it was better lighting than TV. It wasn't too bright. And it really resonated with me. And so we were driving down the road, and I said, man, that's a badass match you had with Paul Roma. I said, you know what was my favorite part of the match? He goes, let me think. He went about 2 or 3 miles down the road. He was driving. He goes, it's when I had that arm bar on him.
How'd he know?
I said, how'd you know? He goes, this is exactly from Paul. This is exactly from Paul Orndorff's lips. He goes, because it was power. He goes, you knew I had control of him. It was power. And I said, I guess you're right, because it resonated with me, and it was just the picture of who was in control right there at that time and who was dominant. So anyway, segue out of that, we're going to take a little pause for the calls and come back and finally
talk about promos.
Mick, can you cut a promo?
Oh, heck yeah.
All right, we're coming back with Mick Foley. Talk promos, a word from our sponsors.
You're listening to another classic episode of The Steve Austin Show, only on PodcastOne.
Do you own a home or condo? Or perhaps you rent a house or apartment? Sure you do, and Geico knows it can be hard work. Because whether you own or rent, you still have to fill it full of your stuff. Your furniture, the flat screen, and all the boxes of stuff that have been sitting there ever since you moved in, but haven't unpacked. It's hard to find the time, right? But you know what's easy? Bundling policies with Geico. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowner's or renter's insurance along with your auto policy. That way, you'll rest easy knowing that your home and all your stuff is protected, like the furniture and that flat screen. Plus, getting a quote on homeowners and renters insurance is super easy through Geico. It's a good thing, too, because you already have so much to do around your home. You know, like going through all those boxes of stuff. Visit geico.com, get a quote, and see how much you could save. It's Geico easy. Visit geico.com today. That's geico.com.
Steve Austin Unleashed.
All right, here we are. 30 minutes ago when we started this show, we was going to talk about promos, and we're finally doing that. You talk about a lying son of a bitch. I thought this whole hour was going to be dedicated about the promo, but we can hammer it for 30 minutes.
Yes, we can.
So, coming up in school, short answers. Good student, bad student.
Underachiever. I didn't become a good student in college until I started wrestling and had a focus, and then I became a very good college student.
Smart or dumb?
Very smart. I was smart.
I always give you credit for being one of the smartest guys I've ever met in the history of business. You better not fuck this up.
Yeah, man. I was.
So, what were you majoring in?
communications major. I was radio and TV, and that really came into.
They teach you the rap there. What do they teach you when you're a radio TV person? Because I wish I would have majored in this.
Man, I was an editing machine. Now I can't edit at all.
But it wasn't on camera stuff. It was behind the scenes.
It was. I would do on cameras too. I was even when I was a teacher assistant, I was very happy to be on camera. I'm appear in the students' projects. Yeah,
okay, so then in your college career or growing up, extrovert, introvert?
I was an introvert who liked to get reactions as a performer.
So then once that camera come on, you're ready to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I thrived on. It was never the competition. It was always about getting the reaction, which is why I'm able to make that really nice segue and get that same feeling of fulfillment from doing my shows that I used to get in the ring. They're different reactions, but I realized, like in '99, as the lighter-hearted mankind, it took me a while to accept that a laugh could be as valuable as a wince. It took me a while to accept that my job was to send people home happy and not necessarily just concerned or disturbed. But like late 80s, early 90s, I wanted people to be I wanted to strike fear into the hearts of people.
Yeah, so then what was your mindset when you developed that first, as I remember your promos in World Class, that Cactus Jack promo? I mean, it was kind of like, the voice.
Yeah.
Higher pitched,
right.
Intense, hell-bent on a mission, not a deeply layered promo that you would go on to cut in ECW or WWF. So what was the genesis of the promo as far as Cactus Jack speaking to the universe?
Genesis of the promo was just to have something in your mind. And I think that's where the guys today are being underserved by the scripted promo. And I've said this before.
And they're being denied the freedom and the ability to have fun and create. Go ahead.
And the necessity and pressure of driving down the road and being driving down the road in character. The promo that suffers is not the one that day that somebody's writing for you, because they might write a heck of a promo for you. The promo that suffers is the promo a month down the line, a year down the line, for the rest of your career, because you're not feeling it. And
growing.
The guys who do feel it stand out, like a Bray Wyatt, Dean Ambrose. They stand out, because I'd be surprised if they're not having a lot of say in the words they speak. But other guys, you can see them trying to recite, and it's not the same. It doesn't mean you can't take someone else's verbiage and make it your own, and people have won Academy Awards for doing that. But I like to be the guy who could respond to anything. Jake Roberts last night, I was privileged to have Jake on the stage during the Q&A, and Jake talked about the days when you do 57 promos for local towns, and you were there when that was still part of the job description. And you could be the guy who just did the same promo 57 times for different cities. You could be the guy who tried to do something different each time. And so I'll give credit a lot of credit to DDP. I didn't know when I returned to WCW in 1991 that I was essentially just supposed to be one of these guys who's a progression of guys going to be fed to Sting to try to get to heat him up a little bit. He'd been logged down with 2 or 3 opponents for quite a while. Nobody told me that was a job description. I was told I was coming in and work with Sting. I thought I was coming in as a top guy. And I didn't know that they had this 6-week run in mind for me. And Dallas apparently went to Dusty while I was cutting pro. I still remember, like I said, you got 57 things. And I was talking about how I couldn't go to, I was having trouble falling asleep. So I started counting all the different ways that I could injure Sting. I finally fell asleep at 427. I hadn't even gotten to his legs yet. And Dallas went to Dusty Rhodes and said, "You got to come down here and take a look at this guy."
That's great.
If I just had the one promo, all right, Montgomery, boy, I'm gonna teach you a lesson. 30 seconds, Montgomery. Well, let me tell you something. I had something in my mind, all the time thinking about these things, so that when I finally did get the chance, it was like release. And I benefited a lot from the frustration I felt, especially over the years. And especially when I got to ECW, and knew what it was like. And I always talk about that. I always say me, you, and then I throw Dustin in as well. And I say there was this, this sense of frustration that there was a glass ceiling, and there was Sting up there in that top floor, and there were 3 or 4 other guys knocking and going, we'd like to know what it's like to be up there too. And then I would talk about how, because I didn't have that, I have to gauge how well my career was going by how often I was recognized at the Waffle House. And then it leads into a funny story about encountering, a guy who's taking wrestling way too seriously. But if I didn't have that frustration, and I go out and say you were in the same boat, when I went to ECW, everything had been fine, and I'd been treated the way that I thought I should have, I don't think I could have cut those promos in ECW. And I don't mean to pick on the guy, and I've since apologized, and I've come to learn that the only thing I've ever had against him is that he was making a lot of money at a time when I wasn't. Without Mark Merrow, I'm not sure if either you or I would have really made it in WWE, because he was that guy. You talk about a guy who had a target on his back. He was like, he came in 3 days after Vince looked at me and said, "We don't give guarantees in WWE, I'll say E, we give opportunities." And 3 days later, in comes Mark Merrow with the first ever guaranteed contract. And maybe I was happy to be in WWE, and I was smiling on the outside, but deep down there was a sense of purpose. And I remember you and I going out as a heel match in 96, early 97, and tearing it down, calling stuff on the spot. We didn't realize why we went 5 minutes over is because the match was so good. WCW went into a break, and they knew we could carry the ball. But I think the sense that we both had is we're going to show these guys that they picked the wrong guy to give a contract to. And I honestly, I mean, from an emotionally stable standpoint, I'd like to be able to say I could have cut the same promos if I'd been happy and emotionally healthy. But I was frustrated, I was angry, and I had a way of letting that out in my promo. But
where'd the back end of that promo come from when you raised the pitch? Is that the frustration? Because you talk about, and I haven't even got to his legs yet, because that's when you pitch it up.
Yeah, well, there was a sense of fun in doing it. I enjoyed that, and I enjoyed the performance part.
But what got you down that path of thinking? I mean, was it a movie? I mean, was it anybody's character?
It was talking to guys like Robert Fuller, and it was talking to guys like Jimmy Cornette who believed in me, and it was watching some of the guys, and it was, borrowing a little bit from Terry Funk, borrowing a little bit, even though he wasn't known to be a great promo, borrowing a little bit from Terry Gordy, borrowing a little bit of the animation from Jimmy Snuka.
I like the honesty of Terry Gordy. He told you how it was, like it was, as it was.
Yeah.
And straight at you, both barrels. I love Robert Fuller's promos. Man, guy's highly unheralded. Of course, Jim Cornette was a mile a minute, a blue streak, and never repeat anything at the same time twice. So I loved his promos, but they're all different from yours.
Yeah.
So, and when you got to ECW, started cutting all that multi-layered shit. What was the thinking behind that?
I thought my time had come and gone. I really did. I really thought my time had come and gone, and that I was going to be the guy destined to, make a living bleeding. At one point, I don't know if you know this, but I went to Paul Heyman and I told him that I was going to go see if I could start working for WCW on Monday nights as like more or less a glamorized enhancement guy.
Right.
And he said, "Why do you want to do that?" And I said, "Because I think with ECW, WCW, and the work I'm doing in Japan, I could put together a pretty decent living for myself." He said, you don't think you have what it takes to be in WWE? I said, I know I don't. And Paul, he sat me down and he said, "You might think I'm crazy." He said, "But if you're willing to listen to me and let me guide you, within 1 year, you're going to get that call from WWE." He said, "You might think I'm crazy, but within 5 years, you're going to be world heavyweight champion." And he looked at me, I'll never forget it. He said, "You might think I'm completely out of my mind, but 19 years from now, my client, Brock Lesnar." All right, that part of it didn't happen, but
we were watching Monday Night Raw a while ago. When Mick Foley walked in, I DVR'd Monday Night Raw, so I took it back to the Paul Heyman promo so he could see it because he cut such a badass promo. But anyway, so when Paul pulled you aside and told you that, what are you thinking? You full of shit, or did you believe in him?
I remember him telling me he couldn't do that. I can't remember if he said I couldn't. He wouldn't advise it. He thought that he saw more potential in me as a player than I did. I mean, when I was giving those promos about Tommy Dreamer, the one you came in and we're listening to, where I talk about how I may have burned my bridge. It's not too late for you. I mean, I really felt like I was like the Jacob Marley of professional wrestling, like a guy who had kids, made a bad decision, left this job with the 6-figure income, left the 2 kids hanging, so now I could go to Japan and get blown up and stitched up and come to ECW, where I did have that sense of frustration. I mean, you remember J.T. Smith?
Yeah.
There you could let the F-bombs fly, and I did it very seldomly. But, I mean, I don't think there was any question that I was being 100% honest when I talked about J.T. Smith slipping off the top rope, hitting his head just swelled instantly. And those fans started chanting, you effed up, you effed up. And I looked at the camera and I said, you effed up? Fuck you. Who are you? Like, who? There was a sense how dare you tell us what to do? And then, any guy who left was accused of selling out. And I knew then that there wasn't going to be anybody taking up, charity drives for somebody who couldn't make his house payment. And so I definitely had this sense that, of almost desperation. I was being completely honest when I was cutting those promos about Tommy Dreamer. But in the back of my head, there was that element of hope that Paul had put in me, that, if that there was maybe something else to be said. But I always thought it was going to be another possible run.
When did you know you was laying down heavy promos?
When I left that house,
because
yeah,
right, when you're floundering,
yeah,
when you're just flapping your gums. Yeah. I've been there, I've done it, but I know when I felt it, when I knew when I was making money.
It was we went to, I think it was Ron Buffone, the cameraman, whose house we'd go to, and we'd cut the promos in the basement. And I cut the 3 promos in a row. It was the Uncle Willie promo, and there was a second promo, and then the famous Kane Dewey promo.
Yeah.
Cut them. I had my kids and my wife. I dropped them off at the park. I came back to pick them up like an hour later, and I felt like I was like a different man. Like I'm in complete control. Like I can do this. I didn't know if I'd ever get the chance to do it on a major level again, but I realized that I was, like in, like some rare air there with the ability to.
Now, how long did you think about these? I mean, because I would imagine you put a little bit of thought, but I would imagine you just going with the flow. 70%.
Thought. I never wrote them down. I remember, as nice it was that Joey said I showed off my skills as a writer, I never wrote anything down. Not even a phrase. It was all going down the road. The car was always like my my play.
Think tank?
Yeah, it was like my think tank. Yeah. To this day, it's the only place where I listen to music. And I'd listen to those songs and I'd see these images, come alive in my head. And especially as I got older and realized that, the moment when I started thinking good enough was good enough, I realized I'd lost the race. That I wasn't somebody I could be proud of anymore. Like I liked being that guy, whose biggest obstacle was taking the images that were so real to me in my head and making them come to life the next night in a promo, or making them come to life in a match the next month. They were very real to me. And there was times when I had to struggle to try to translate that and bring it alive in the ring, especially given, the limited physical hand I had. And that's where, showing up to work with guys like you and guys like Taker and guys like Rock and guys like Hunter really helped, because I was able to take these ideas, share them, have somebody like a Shawn Michaels at Mind Games in '96 say, okay, I'm drained, I'm exhausted, do you have anything? Here you go. Here's 26 minutes worth of stuff I've got on my mind, and have him go, wow, not only is that great, but you're looking out for me and you're going to try to make me look as good as you possibly can while getting over yourself, which was always the goal. So I couldn't have done it without the guys, that I had. I don't think it's exaggerating to say we had the best possible, equation there, with so many guys coming into their own at the same time.
In ECW?
In ECW, and then into WWE.
But let's stick with ECW because Shane Douglas was laying down some heavy promos.
Yeah.
His tone, and he would cover material as well, but his tone, his demeanor, it was condescending and mean-spirited and dominant, and I loved his promo. It was straightforward.
Yeah.
Meat and potatoes, and he's a little bit arrogant.
Yeah.
So I really dug his promos. Raven, hell of a damn promo.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed Raven's promos.
And some of the best promos I cut were with Raven.
Right.
And as great as he was, one of his strengths was when he saw me on a roll, he wasn't. Last night, for example, we do the Q&A. It's my show. My instinct is to try to close it. I usually have a closing story. You know, I don't rely on the last question to dictate like how well the show ends. But I'm like, you know what? I've got Jake. I've got Jim. I'm going to close with a story, and then we're going to go to the Q&A, and we're just going to hope for the best. And a question comes Jake's way, and he hits it out of the park. And I'm actively thinking to myself, do I try to grab the microphone, and do I try to get a last laugh, or do I just accept that Jake is – that in the end, people are going to walk away with a huge smile on their face, and the better Jake is, the better people remember my show as being.
Right.
And Jake finished his story. He handed me the mic, and I said, thank you so much, everyone. And I was really proud of the fact that I didn't fight it. I just went with it, and there was no better closer. So in that respect, Raven probably did the same thing. All right, this guy's really rolling. This is part of our promo. And then he would, I'd finish, and Raven would just hit that pose, and it would be, that's powerful.
You brought up Jake the Snake Roberts. Were you at the Hall of Fame this past year?
I was, yeah.
Yeah, we talked.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, I'm an idiot. Too many steel chairs. And you got hit with more than I did. Question, you remember Jake's acceptance speech at the Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
Stole the show.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, that was one of the best promos I've ever heard.
Yeah.
You remember it?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hell, we masturbate people's emotions. Yeah. Great line.
But just, I mean, he started off, and then he pulled your heartstrings, and then he took you deep.
Yeah.
And it kind of scared you a little bit, and God damn, it's something about half crazy. And then pulled your heartstrings some more, got some heat, and then come up. It was like, God, it was the best. I really thought it was the best Hall of Fame speech I've ever heard.
It was great. At the time, it's unfortunate at the time, Warriors passed. At the time, my thought was that Jake should have gone on last because he had the best story to tell.
Right.
And that was why I made the little public tweet, which obviously I'm glad to say that I was asked the night before Jim or Warrior died, like, what did I think of his promo? And I said, I went back, I thought I talked about it with Brian Gewirtz. I said, there's a lot of good stuff in there. If you take little sections of it, it was really powerful. And I thought it was a good promo. And then I was really happy that when Warrior was out there for that last promo, that the camera panned and there was a Foley in the front row. My daughter was in the front row, and she was cheering. So she was representing me in the respect that I should have shown Warrior that night. Well,
I've always said this, when they made the Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior DVD, whatever it was, there was some heat there, whatever, and it finally got washed away, and everybody was cool right there at 30. But I always thought that the Warriors promos fit him, and they were perfect for his character and his persona, and they didn't have to make sense.
No,
I mean, but you believed it. Here's the thing. It's like I've always said, and I've said it was with Arn, and you've probably been there. Ron Simmons can go out there and say the ABCs and scare the shit out of you, and you believe it. Because he's got that tone, and he's Ron Simmons. Everybody knows how bad he is.
Yeah.
He's one of the sweetest guys in the world. But that's how serious you take Ron Simmons when he. Remember when he used to be the what was Farouk, and they put him in that silly light blue outfit, and he had that helmet called the Skullbuster. Well, that's what we called it. Behind it, who would know? All these years later, I got an obstacle course named the Skullbuster, but that's what we called that blue helmet. But nobody ever laughed at Ron because he was such a badass.
We laughed behind his
back. Yeah, but now if it had been you or me that wore that outfit, we'd be getting shredded. But Warriors promos fit his gimmick, and they furthered his cause.
I'll give you an example. I mentioned when you talk about the promos that I leaned on, and I said Terry Funk, which everyone can understand. I said Terry Gordy, which you can't understand. But when you say Jimmy Snuka, it was like, well, Snuka was a terrible promo guy. I was like, no, he wasn't. he wasn't because you believed him. Even when I remember to this day, the cage match.
Same with the Warrior, dude.
Yeah,
same principle.
It wasn't, phonetically
right.
a marvelous promo, but part of the reason I hitchhiked to the Garden, I remember the promo. He goes, "Brother, let me tell you something about that cage. You can break a bone, and I'm talking about any part of a bone." It didn't matter that he messed it up. It was that intensity and the delivery, and you didn't get the sense that anybody was feeding him or anybody wrote down.
You can break any part of a bone.
Yeah. And it was like I need to be there, and that's why I'll talk with a guy. Like I asked you earlier, how tight you were with Roddy. You don't know that well. Guys like Roddy and Dusty, Midnight Express, Rock and Roll Express, who got over everywhere, and especially the heels like Roddy, who had to talk people into a building, and Dusty largely as a baby, almost entirely as a babyface, but went and did it, year in and year out, change of scenery, still talking people into the building. It's still it's changed. It's more about entertaining people, but in the end, I still think there's something to be said for that killer promo, which is why, even though we don't have the buy rates like we used to gauge the interest, like this SummerSlam is going to be hot, largely because of some great promo work by Paul.
And I'll go a step further and say answered by Cena, because a while ago I showed you the Paul Heyman promo. I didn't show you the Cena return.
Yeah.
Cena delivered. And a lot of time he goes over that same old bubblegum bullshit, and it's a repeat about passion.
Yeah.
But man, the dude, when he goes out there a little bit and gets intense and delivers a message, he's an A1 promo, and he's returning
I'll say
fire.
that. I remember, when I was fairly new to Twitter, and I didn't have, the numbers that would, that fortunately stacked up. But I was living in Florida at the time, and I sent out. He gave one of those promos, and I said, "Man, great promo by @John Cena. I think it's about time people recognize his legacy of great matches in WWE." And I looked over at my daughter, and I went, "I just got 800 messages." She goes, "But you sent that out a minute ago." And I said, "Well, let me try it again." I said, "Oh, yeah, try to find a bad @John Cena pay-per-view match for me." And like 900 people answered back, "We're watching it." And they all had the one match. And I said, if everyone's pointing to one match, it's a pretty good indication that he's had a run of great matches. He's had the opponents. And it reminded me, in my high school had the winningest lacrosse program in the country. And there were people in the community who thought that this coach, Joe Cuso, didn't know how to coach, that he compiled 700 wins by having the right talent every year for 39 years. It's completely ridiculous, and guys say, well, he had the right talent. Like, what about that match with great
Yeah.
And it was the first time I'd had a negative backlash. By and large, up to that point, it was people who were agreeing with what I had to say. And when I came back to WWE for one of my occasional stops, I remember John pulled me aside and he just said, "Thank you." And that's all he said. I knew exactly what he was talking about. And I just said, "John," I said, I feel like I'm entitled to, I don't think wrestling's history should be written solely by the fans. Like, I think I have a say as well. And I felt like that needed to be said. But you're right. When he's on his game, he's as good as anyone.
Talking to the legend Mick Foley, we're talking about all kinds of bullshit here today on the show. We'll take a pause for the calls and a word from my sponsors. Coming right back with the one and only Mick Foley.
You're listening to another classic episode of The Steve Austin Show, only on PodcastOne.
All right, coming back with Mick Foley. Real quickly, we're gonna draw this hour in, Mick. Let me ask you a question. We've been talking about some promos and going back to your ECW days. I saw a DVD documentary called ECW Barbed Wire City. Did you see this?
I haven't seen it yet.
Man, it was just it was kind of a deal where, to me, the glass was half empty, and guys just went in there and come out a meat grinder and beat up, fucked up, and on pills and dope, and just in a bad way.
Yeah.
You came out. You were there for shit. How long?
I was there for a year and a half.
You made it out okay.
Yeah.
I was there. I came in, and Paulie gave me a call when I tore my tricep and got fired by WCW. I came in. I wasn't there very long. Dressing room was a wild situation.
Yeah.
And people were doing different things. And I hooked up with a couple of guys and was doing certain things. It was an interesting dynamic.
Going back to those promos, like, I loved it was a love-hate relationship because I realized it was a dead-end street. That buying into the EC dub was a dead end street, and I realized that you had to get out. If you had the chance to get out of there, you had to take it. And the "you sold out" chants rang so hollow to me.
Right.
And I think anybody who bought into them and stayed to avoid them was being delusional.
So much of that stuff was pure violence. Some of it was the fastest moving, greatest shows I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But on the other end of it is, diminishing returns. When you go so far out, you can't come back in. And I'm very thankful to the time I spent there to get me to the next level, which was WWF. But man, when I look back, it was just, goddamn, it was heavy duty, fast forward bullshit with a lot of violence.
Yeah, it was.
There were some good storylines. But it was testosterone, adrenaline, straight at you. At any point did you think, hey, shit's a little out of hand here?
Yeah. Do you know what? Yes. I remember, flying back from Japan with the Sandman, even though we worked for two different promotions, and being really hurt. A wrestler, you're not supposed to talk about hurt feelings, but feeling hurt when he revealed how messed up he was when we had some of our best matches. And I thought, it's disrespectful. This is a game about, trust and respect. And when I went to Paul and said that I wouldn't work with somebody who was impaired, when I showed back up in the dressing room, I was like, I'm the dick.
Yeah. That's kind of the culture there.
And I think that was a teachable moment for me. That when if you would ask any of the ECW guys, did you turn on Mick at that point? Then I don't think anyone consciously did, but I think there was a sense of like, well, who does he think he is?
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean we can't work impaired? And for me, that was a sense, that maybe things were out of hand when the guy trying to, strike a blow for a safer work environment was made to feel like a dick.
Hey, when I say I hooked up with a couple of guys before the show started, I wasn't wrestling. I was just waiting until the end of the show to cut a promo. So anyway, and that being said, I'm not a saint. But to that end, never been in the ring. Well, 2 times I was probably hammered going to the ring, but other than that, never. And I'd straight up shoot because it's here on the Steve Austin Show. Question, at what point does a work environment damn near turn into a shoot when you take the barometers off the violence at hand, with all the bullshit that the foreign objects and the hardcore style matches?
For me, that point was Royal Rumble '99, and luckily, And you're
going to say WWF rather than ECW?
Yeah, I think so. That's the match that made me turn around. It also happened that it was documented on film by Barry Blaustein Beyond the Mat, and I wasn't aware of how out of hand it had gotten until I saw my children react. Like, I don't know if I would have thought it was that bad, but it was.
This is the match with you and The Rock.
Yeah. And it was just violent. It just got out of hand. And it was.
What was your. Now, because here's the deal. You and The Rock have a match.
Yeah.
You get handcuffed, and he's going to hit you with about, what, 8 or 10? 5. 5 chair shots.
5.
It seemed like 100 when you were backstage watching. I was there. And, man, I watched those first couple, and, I mean, he was laying them in because he had to.
Yeah.
And it was agreed upon.
Yeah. I didn't realize how beneficial your body's ability to give. Not taking anything away from the brutality of a chair shot, but at least when you're you can give a little bit. I didn't understand it. It's like the Cinderella song, don't know what you got until it's gone. Once that ability was gone and my hands were cuffed behind my back and that first chair shot came and it hurt me down to my toes, like I realized this was a whole new level of pain. And my reaction to that shot was to fire up. You know, it was a strange thing. It was a suspension of disbelief. Like I became that character in the worst possible scenario. I became Mankind, believing completely in the character with The Rock and a steel chair and my kids in the front row. And by the time we got to the agreed upon number, which was 5, I'm still in the ring. You know, like I'm supposed to be 2/3 of the way up the aisle. And it took 11 to get up there. And
so it was agreed upon 5 and ended up at 11.
Yeah, it just...
Because it kept going on forever. When you said 5 a while ago, I said, dude, there's more than that.
And the mindset was, at the time, he was getting ready to work with you, right? For Mania.
Right.
Mania 99. Rock was really... He was entertaining. He was funny. And I thought we needed to show a meaner side. Like that was my job, and I wanted to make money while I did it. You know, I had no question about that. But I thought that's what I owed the company. That's what I owed The Rock, was to reveal that mean streak, and we did it. You know, no question that we accomplished that. And due to a unique set of circumstances, you know, Vince wrestling for the first time in the Rumble, Rock needing to go out and be part of that Rumble, me coming back and being in rough shape. Rock maybe not properly addressing the condition that I was in, and thankfully, like the angel on my shoulder turned out to be a Scotty Too Hottie for alerting me that I'd been really rough on The Rock in the commentary for Beyond the Mat, and because if Rock had found that out on his own, and without me telling him and giving him the heads up that I apparently had been a little rough on him in commentary, if he hadn't gone out, you know, that day and watched it with his wife and come back and had a good talk with me, I imagine there'd be some really bad feelings. And you don't want to have bad feelings towards a guy who's doing so much better in life, you know, than you are.
What were you saying?
I haven't watched it back, but I know that, you know, this is where, you know, maybe if people were scripting promos for me in 99, I would have been a little healthier emotionally, because in the back of my mind, the Rock and Sock connection, you know, we were brought about with the express intent of me turning on The Rock. And immediately my thought was, I'm going to go back to the way I felt that day in the ring. You know, the way I felt backstage.
But you keep saying Beyond the Mat. You're talking about the documentary.
Documentary.
I don't remember you going crazy on a documentary.
It was a special edition, maybe 5 years down.
Okay.
I held on to this for a while. 5 years later, or whatever it was, the case would be special director's cut with me and Jesse doing commentary, where I still can't watch it. I don't want to hear what I said, but Scotty came up to me, you know, and I'm pretty tight with Scotty. He was like, I watched Beyond the Mat. And I went, yeah? And he goes, you kind of buried The Rock. And I went, I did? Like, how bad? He was like, pretty bad. And so I went up. That's the way I like to be, you know, is to be honest with the guy. And then he did go out like that day and got it, watched it with his wife, and he was like, you were pretty tough on me, but I could have been a little more. He was a little, you know, he felt bad about the way he came across. And, you know, that's the way you do things. You sit down, you talk them over. We came to a much better understanding, and we're able to much better appreciate what we had done in the ring as both partners and opponents.
Well, take me through the 11 chair shots, because, dude, watching that shit backstage was brutal. And then when I watched, you know, Beyond the Mat, your kids are shrieking on camera, and they're covering their eyes.
Yeah.
I mean, it broke my heart.
It did mine, too. I remember Barry Blaustein telling me, you know, he was like, I need for you to watch this. I said, what do you mean? From my vantage point, by the time I got back, it was my daughter going, Daddy, it looks like you have a boo-boo. And I said, yeah, honey, Daddy's got a little boo-boo. And she said, Daddy, that looks like a big boo-boo. You know, and on the film, I go, yeah, it is a big. they were completely composed by the time I saw them. I had no idea how upset they'd been. And after all this time, like, the strangest thing to me is that I thought it'd be perfectly fine, like, for them to watch me get stitched up. You know, like, that wasn't a question mark in my head. And so it was about that time, you know, late 1999. This is given that I was, you know, en route, you know, on course to make more money than I ever had, you know, with the couple of years coming up. And, that guilt weighed so heavily on my, on my conscience, and combined with the knee problems I was having and the short-term memory problems. You know, when I went to Vince and told him what was up from a health standpoint, he said to me, "You just had your last match." This is at a point, fast forward to October 99, Al Snow and I just won the tag team championship. I had a book that was either at number 3 or number 1 on the New York Times list, and I've just had my last match, which I would have had it not been for the Steve Austin neck injury. And that happened in November. Was it November 99?
Yeah.
And so there was this gaping hole in the roster. And, you know, fortunately, for the sake of, closure and finances, you know, there was that big hole and an opening for a guy to have a couple last matches and go out the way that I wanted to with Triple H.
But I saw you kids at WrestleMania 30. When they look back now, I mean, and I can't believe, dude. I mean, it's been so long.
Yeah.
How old is Noel?
Noel's 20.
How old is Dewey?
Dewey's 22.
Okay, now those are the two that I remember.
Yeah,
I know you have two more kids.
Yeah.
But so now, when this conversation comes up, how do they reflect on that? What do they remember about it? Are they okay? Did it scar them?
Well, kids are resilient. They bounce back.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you was going to say
Go,
that.
John
Go
Candy,
to
yeah.
patented answer. Yeah.
You know what? By the time I even found out how badly they had taken it, they seemed to have recovered. But that didn't, it didn't assuage my, concerns. I felt terrible. And then they started thinking that every day I went to work,
this is
was
what happened.
Be like that. And they started getting old enough to realize that all those years of saying, "Oh, Daddy's fine, Daddy's fine," they were coming to a point where my body was really starting to show the wear and tear, where it was limping really badly. I'd realize, kicking a ball back and forth, that ball didn't travel exactly to me. I wasn't getting to it. I had no lateral movement, But it was really, from Vince's standpoint, the head injuries, that caused him to say, "You just had," there's a guy, and I'll be glad to, to say bad things about Vince from time to time, but deep down, and I've had this, conversation with people, like, deep down, I think Vince is a really good guy with a couple of quirks.
He is a good dude, man. I mean, that guy, hey, straight up, he wouldn't ask you to do anything that he would not do himself.
That's the truth,
correct?
Yeah.
That's the way he is. Here's another true statement. If Vince McMahon gives you his word, you don't need a piece of paper, correct?
Correct.
He's a man of his word.
Yeah.
Man, I've had high times and low times with him and times in between. I always tell people, man, I learned more working for Vince McMahon than I did in 5 years of college. And I don't know, I just had a good – don't get me wrong. I mean, half the shit, you saw the Austin McMahon feud. You were there.
Yeah.
And, at times some of it was a shoot. But, I love the guy. I think he's a cool son of a bitch. There'll never be another one of him. He's the most unique individual I've ever met.
No, you put three guys in a room who've worked for him, and sooner or later they come around to Vince. And some guys are bitter, but most of the time you have the biggest smile on your face.
I think the bitter part of being gone from the business is, some of the guys, it's almost a parallel of the NFL. The big money wasn't around for everybody back then. And then it came into the big money, and it continues to be that way, as it has with everything.
Yeah.
So has been a parallel of professional wrestling. And so a lot of guys that, didn't end up with what they thought they would end up. It just seems to be the guys that are better. But nonetheless, he's a very unique dude. Hey, dude. Let's shut this thing down and save a lot more for round 3.
Can I just close by saying, Jimmy crack corn,
and I don't care.
Jimmy crack corn, and I don't care. Jimmy crack corn, and I don't care. I've got Olympic go.
You had to go down there. You know what? This is the Steve Austin Show. I'm going to call it audible. Bonus with Mick Foley. This sorry son of a bitch. Where did you and me first meet? Okay, I know we met in Dallas.
Yeah,
okay,
Dallas,
but when did we decide we were going to start traveling together?
Man, I think, 90. I came back in 91, and, I was with Abdullah. I was with Abdullah the Butcher for a while. I think it was after Abdullah left, and sometime in the winter of '92, and that was when me, you, and DDP started hooking up and creating some memories. Me, you, and Regal, for some good. But
my point is, we always got along, and then all these years later, and then you and I end up in WWF, as you say, E. So there we are. I don't remember where the hell was it. It seemed like somewhere in the Midwest. And this was the Shrimpin' Ain't Easy promo.
Yeah.
And was that a house show?
Milwaukee,
was it?
Milwaukee was the one.
See, here's the thing about you. You have such good recall.
Yeah.
And after all the steel chairs, you
it's
remember more than I
long
did.
term. It's razor sharp.
Okay.
Razor sharp. Short term.
It's crazy how the long term and the short term are two different ball games.
When I did and I don't mean to leave on a downer, but when I did that impact test, when I went there, and I didn't know how to game the test. Apparently, there's guys who know what the test consists of and try to do poorly on it, so that after an injury, they don't drop off.
They're working it.
Yeah, which is just doing themselves a disservice.
Right.
But I took that test and I was answering all the questions and then when they come around and I realized this is about my short-term memory and it's gone. It was so distressing to me that independent of WWE that I called Dr. Cantu at the Boston Center for Traumatic Encephalopathy. And I scheduled an appointment on my own, and it was like a day or two later, John Laurinaitis called me up, and he said, there's been an issue with your impact test. So I had two top neurologists telling me that my time was done. I guess we're done here.
No, because we're going to leave on a high note. When did the Shrimpin' Ain't Easy? How do we originally? That was a house show or television taping?
It was. I think it began as a way to annoy Jack Lanza. It began as a way to say, "Hey, watch Steve."
But somebody recorded. No, this because it's on record. Wasn't it when we went dark on a Raw?
You know what? I might be mixing up the few because we went to it a few times. The climactic one, in my opinion, was
Shrimpin' Ain't Easy, Pimpin' Ain't Easy,
Chimpin' Ain't Easy. Yeah, I'd have to go back and see it. I think I'm actually confusing it with the one in Milwaukee where that was the promo where Rock would come out and talk about your monkey ass and Kane.
No, this was what did Jericho come out on this one?
I don't know.
I can't remember.
I'm thinking of the 4-way in Milwaukee where none of us could stop laughing.
But and the thing was, as soon as one of us came up with a new gimmick, of course, the next guy's got a top hat, and it was a deal where I ain't got no hair. I got a mustache and a goatee, so I'm laughing.
Yeah.
And then
you put your hand
I got my left arm.
Yeah.
It's like I'm trying to see what time it is right by my mouth so no one can see, the very intense Stone Cold Steve Austin, of course, who we know does not have a sense of humor, laughing. It was absolutely ridiculous. We got to leave on one more high note. I had hurt my neck. Well, what a high note. I had hurt my neck, but they still needed me at the house shows to help draw a house and to keep me, into people's eyeballs and be present.
Is this the Popcorn Angel?
Yes. So yourself and Owen Hart were working a program, or y'all working on the road. And who was I out there? Was I there?
You were out there as my second.
I was there as your second.
And we almost got you to pop. We almost got you to laugh. And then you were on the fringe, and then we said, all right, we're going to go all out. We're going to go all out today. And we'd find the different foreign objects. And this is when I realized, those hardcore rules, anything goes, could be played one of two different ways. One was the way I specialized, like that heavy concrete, high impact stuff. But I also learned in '97 from like beeling Triple H off the top rope by his nose with a pair of salad tongs, that you could have some fun as well. And so that night, like the killer gimmick was the Santa sack size of popcorn that you'd have from the not catering, but the
concession stand.
And Owen started hitting me with that bag, you know. And a couple nights before in Anaheim, I'd unloaded like a box of 1,000 soft drink lids. And as they're floating down. No, his knees are buckling. And so we almost had you there, and we finally come back. And I remember, you know, there was some concerns. I think we were in Northern California, and Dave Meltzer from The Observer was going to be there. We didn't want to stink the place up with Meltzer rating us. And then it was like, you know what type of men are we? Like, we're gonna go out of our way to make this the worst match possible if it involves popping Stone Cold. So Owen started hitting me with that Santa sack size of popcorn. And when I went down, it appeared to the naked eye like I was just like, you know, like flopping about aimlessly. But in truth,
that wasn't the case.
I was creating an angel out of the debris of the popcorn. And when I got up and you saw that angel with the plus-size ass, yeah.
I saw what you were doing from the get-go. Mick Foley's laying in the middle of a ring. There's literally, if you waited, it'd be 10 pounds. It was like a 50-gallon bag or more of popcorn in the middle of the ring. You're laying in the middle of it, spreading and closing your arms and your legs over your head, making a snowman is what I would call it. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, I got my head on the mat. I'm laughing my ass off. It's the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. And really, the night before, 2 nights before, when the soft drink lids, you know, like when you go to McDonald's and you get the damn Coke underneath the gimmick thing and you put the little lid on, it was a bag full of those was the weapon at hand. And as those things were raining down, and was it Owen or you go,
Owen was the one.
Because Owen was the hokiest seller of all time.
The knees buckling.
Yeah.
But it was that next night, and the line that made me, you know, where we knew we'd done it. We see you laughing, and we see that back shaking, you know, a big back. Like you said, the head's turning bright red. You got your arm over your. Everyone could see that you're laughing, and we're the only two people who could hear you go, "You guys are the shits.
You guys are the shits. You're the shits. Go home." I'm laughing my ass off. Dude, this reminds me of one other time. What were we doing there? For some reason, Tony Atlas was working with Sting in WCW. Do you remember this occasion?
I do.
And it was a jump spin kick that you know the story. What were we doing at ringside?
Remember, but they were having an awful right.
It was somewhere in Charleston, South Carolina, some little town, and I can't remember what happened, but that was the only other time I can really remember being ringside. I thought she was involved with the match.
I didn't remember. I think we were just watching from afar, and Sting, Hall of Fame wrestler.
Yeah, I don't know Sting very well, but I love him to death and respect him.
Sting needed someone. He needed some substance to bring out the best in him.
Yeah.
And he didn't have it. He didn't have it that night.
And Tony Atlas, I love him to death. One of my old travel partners as well. One of the strongest human beings in the world. And can drink beer, too. But first, they had the god-awfulest match that night.
And Tony's going with the old spot show stuff. He pulled my hair. You know, Tony's Paul, like, this is not working in a main event. You know, we're a international touring company. You can't go after you've seen, you know, Pillman and Brad Armstrong, and you've seen Jushin Liger, and you can't go out there with referee pulled my hair. And they tried, and it was just us.
We're going to go out on this story. What was the funniest thing that ever happened to you in the ring? Your entire career as a performer.
I'm going back. This is the Milwaukee story that I mixed up. It was that, and I don't know if I can properly and especially given that Rock is now Hercules, it's difficult to think of him in this way. But when he would come out and talk about your monkey ass and Kane's red retarded ass and my fat ass, you know, at that point, and we've come a long way as far as social issues, and it's not as funny to say, you know, but the line, it's still kind of funny. In 20 years, it won't be funny at all, which would be a good thing. But I said, you know, I heard you talk about, you know, Kane's red ass and Steve's monkey ass and my fat ass, and it just seems to me that The Rock likes to talk about men's asses a lot. we get the pop, and maybe it's true what they say. Maybe The Rock really does suck after all. And I start giving the hand and tongue motion. And the idea is Rock is now, he's selling it by claiming he doesn't do what I'm claiming he does. And every time he's selling it, the imaginary phallus in his hand gets bigger. And it wasn't until the next day in Milwaukee, it was an afternoon show, and we have a 4 or 5-way, it's your main event, and he goes, man, that was funny yesterday. He goes, wouldn't it be funny if we took it a step further? And it's just the visual. This is Hercules wiping away an imaginary load. Like, no, dismiss, no. And when I got out in the ring, I couldn't even cut my promo because all I could think of was Rock wiping away the imaginary load from this larger-than-life penis that doesn't even exist. I went to open my mouth, and all I could think of is The Rock with this imaginary load on his face, and I couldn't stop. No one even knew why I was laughing. You guys hadn't even heard the conversation. And I thought, oh, man, I'm in trouble because this is a sold-out house. Earl Hebner's, I look over Earl. It looked like Earl was so bright red, and you were in there in the corner. You had your arm over the thing, and every time I tried to, I couldn't do it. I was completely gone. I could not keep a straight face. This is the main event. And one of the things, the life's lesson I took from this was I looked out at the crowd thinking they were going to be hot, and they were laughing just as hard as we were. They didn't know why we were laughing, but they just knew that the guys in the ring were really, loved what they did. Yeah. It was nice to see that human side. I can't remember a thing about the match, and I apologize to The Rock because there was no actual evidence.
No, it was all comedy back in the day. Oh, geez, he's the biggest movie star in the world. I remember one time, this is my last story. They just opened up that brand new building in Dallas, American Airlines Arena. Yeah. I got the phone call. They opened a new building in Dallas, want you and The Rock on top. Oh, shit, that sounds good to me. Call him. So there we go. Go to Dallas, Texas. Main event goes to the ring. Boy, we jump started. All of a sudden, I back Rock into the corner and start teeing off on him. He's about to go do a movie or something, but, so I was missing him by a mile. And I threw about 6, 7 hard ones. I spin me around. He spun me around, started throwing. He missed me by a mile, about 6, 7 shots. I looked at him and said, God damn, one of us got to hit one another sooner or later. We're going to kill this son of a bitch right off the bat. It was the shits. Oh. We had a great time. Anyway, hey, I'm sitting here talking to Mick Foley. This was the second part of a 2-part gimmick here on the Steve Austin Show. We're all over the page because I've known this guy forever. To cover everything in a chronological fashion would be a disservice to the time that we've spent together and the fact that I'm not a bona fide journalist. Mick Foley will return to the area soon or whenever he does, and we will pick up right where we left off. Good Lord willing, the creek don't rise, and then he wants to come back on the show. Hell, you might have had a shitty time.
No, we've been talking about it for a long time. We knew it was something we had to do live, couldn't do it by phone, and I'm glad we held out, and I hope, this lived up to people's lofty expectations.
The way, I got into starting doing this podcast thing, Mick, and I talked to a lot of people on the phone. I Skype with people, and sometimes there's a little bit of lag time there on that Skype, and when that sound hits your earphones, it's a little bit of a clusterfuck. And I knew with our background, I just didn't want a phone call with you.
You want it to be as good as it can possibly be.
Yeah. And I'd love that with everybody, but that's just not the case. And Jim Ross, my buddy, is doing a hell of a job down there in Norman, Oklahoma. His show drops every Wednesday. It's the Ross Report. I know you did his show a while back. Yeah. So anyway, just a plug to @JR's Barbecue on Twitter. Speaking of Twitter, I'm talking to @Real Mick Foley. Yes, there's the fake one out there. Don't follow that son of a bitch. His website is realmickfoley.com. You can catch all his comedy dates. He's on the road doing his thing. And I said comedy, but it's stories. It's a one-man story time.
It does really.
Hey, you ain't made a motherfucker cry yet, have you? At your show?
No, I mean embarrassing them?
No, just cry. Because your show was so bad. No, your show's about a good time. And
it is. People believe that.
Not necessarily a one-man stand-up act.
Yeah. There was a guy talking about my laughs per minute, and I look at laughs like pops in the ring. It's not about how many you get. It's the way people feel when they walk out of that building. If they got a huge smile on their face, and I think I got a really good big smile ratio, And so the stuff I say is not going to be as laugh out loud funny as top comics, but it's good. It's good storytelling.
No, but see, here's the deal, dude. Let me cut you off. I mean, what you're saying is just like going to Japan, whether it's New Japan or All Japan. You've been there.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you're in the back. It's your first time over there. You watch Justin Liger and Eddie Guerrero go out there and mix it up. You're like, how do I follow that?
Yeah.
Well, you just go out there and do your thing.
And
so that's what you're doing.
Tell your
you don't try to
story.
be
Right.
Sam Kinison or try to be Andrew Dice Clay or Eddie Murphy, some of those cats. You're doing your thing.
Doing my thing, and people like it. Everyone's got unique stories. I'm pretty sure in a couple of years there could be some other guys wading in, and I think it's a pretty big canvas. We can all leave our own imprint on there. I just love it, man. And it just going back to what we talked about last week, it makes me feel like I used to feel in the ring without the physical fallout.
What do you do after a show, dude? You back in your car, because I know you do the autograph thing afterwards, but is there that same adrenaline rush?
Sometimes, yeah. If you really feel like you hit it out of the park, it feels like coming back after a great promo.
Does your wife ever say to you, hey, man, you got to get your ass off the road?
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I mean, July was July was 22 days away from home. That was a little long. It's a pretty, sweet spot in the kids' lives, 11 and 13. They need
summer.
Dad. Yeah, they need dad around a little more. So I'm going to try to make it.
You say try. You seem like you hell bent on staying on the road.
No, yes. I'm gonna make a pact to be home at least half the month, and that's where
a pact. Now, what's driving you, dude?
A pact. I will. I'm making a promise to my wife that I will be home at least half the month.
Do you want to be on the road that much? Can you? I mean, did you not get it out of your system?
Well, I like life. I do like life on the road. I
always say when I got a business, I returned back to, and it took me 3 years to make the adjustment to being a civilian. I'm a civilian now. Can you not return to civilian status?
I wrote about this in 2007 in Hardcore Diaries. It's like the Bob Ziegler song. He wants to live like a young man with the wisdom of an old man. He wants his home in security. He wants to live like a sailor at sea. And then Bob's this beautiful loser. You realize you can't have it all. It's like, but I kind of can. I can go out there. I can do my thing. I can have my fun. I can make my money. I go home, and it's quality time. That's one thing. I remember Jake Roberts gave me a book called The 60-Minute Father about maximizing your time when you're home. So, I mean, when I'm home, I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good. We spend a lot of time. The new documentary, I Am Santa Claus, will be dropping in theaters and on DVDs right around Thanksgiving. And one of the things I'm really thankful about is that my son, Huey, is in it quite a bit, and my son Mickey a little bit as well. It's kind of like they're beyond the mat, like their experience with their dad, but doing something so much more peaceful and serene.
It's interesting because next time you come back, as I sit here in my little office at 316 Gimmick Street in Los Angeles, California, Mick Foley's got a green shirt with Santa Clauses all over it. I want to understand what your infatuation is with Christmas. But before we go, one last story. When you got inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame,
right?
How satisfying was that to you? Did that validate everything that you'd done because you'd had as many naysayers that you did that you were just a big bump guy? Did you have a chip on your shoulder? Was there something to prove? Was it just a deep down satisfaction for you as your contributions to the business that you and I love?
I always had this sense that I wouldn't let anyone define my career by whether or not I was inducted into a Hall of Fame. At the end of the day, it's Vince's, decision. And I even said, I would tell them, I would say, well, if it's a big deal to my kids, I guess I would. And the game changer for me was the day that I got a call from Kevin Dunn, and I was working for TNA at the time, and Kevin asked me how I would feel about WWE mentioning my book on their show, which is unheard of,
Yeah.
And so I went in and we watched that show together. I didn't tell my kids they were thinking about mentioning it. And the moment that they mentioned that Michael Cole and the King mentioned the book, it was a moment I changed my mind and said, if I'm asked, I'll go in. no conditions, I go on last, no conditions at all. Oddly, like up until a day or two before the Hall of Fame induction, it had been brought to my attention that my TV time might be cut for Donald Trump. And I let that get to me. Like, I let things get to me about every 6 months, to the point where I called up my daughter and told her I didn't want anyone coming. I didn't want to give anybody the power to hold over me. I was going to make this as unimportant as I could, and that way the blow would not be as devastating when I was cut from TV. And luckily, by the time I got on the stage, it didn't matter to me that I was on first. I never looked at it like it was anything but the biggest event in my life. I understood, or of my career, I understood from a certain vantage point or perspective that and this may be my last opportunity to address an audience that size in my life, especially for that length of time with my own stories. I might be able to go back out there with something that someone else had written for me under some serious time constraints. And I was in the Garden, which meant so much to me. I had my family with me. I had friends who'd been with me since I was 12. And it was the Garden where I had gone and seen Snuka dive off the top of the cell. And I just had this, conscious, feeling of acceptance that I was going to enjoy the moment, and I did. I mean, the moment when the one thing I regret is when I dropped the elbow on Jericho and I got up and I yelled, "You Adrian," I did it. I'm thinking, go home, go home, and I didn't go home. That would have made it a perfect night, And then I had Santa come out at the end, and to surprise. It was a great night. It didn't bother me at all that I was on first. It didn't bother me, I was glad that I had Terry and not a celebrity or not somebody who'd been picked for me, that I was able to make that choice, and that the only prerequisite before going out there is that Vince didn't want us talking about him, thanking him, which I can appreciate. And so it didn't validate everything for me, because honestly, and I'm not like sucking up to the current generation, but those guys make me feel like I'm in the Hall of Fame. The way you get the same treatment, the way I'm treated on a day-to-day basis by people in the streets and by the WWE superstars and divas when I go back every now and then, made me feel like I was in there anyway.
Well, next time you come back, I want to talk to some of those barbed wire death matches, all that bullshit, and then I mean that with respect you was doing over Japan, some of that crazy shit. What was that with Onita?
No, I was Onita was the strong. We were the opposition. We were opposition. Japan. It was Terry, and it was Tracy Smothers.
All right, well, don't go into it yet. I want to catch that on the next go round, because that was some crazy ass shit, dude. I watched some barbaric, brutal stuff you was putting your body through, but nonetheless, he's driving a white Challenger, riding off into the sunset here at 316 Gibbon Street. Go to realmickfoley.com to find out where he's going to be. If he's in your area, go buy a ticket and check a brother out. Thanks, Mick.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you for joining us for another classic episode of The Steve Austin Show. Please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and tell your friends. For more Steve Austin Show, go to PodcastOne.com. That's PodcastOne.com.
All month long, the biggest movies are streaming free on Pluto TV's Popcorn Summer Movies. Watch star-studded blockbusters like Titanic and Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen, or fall in love with charming rom-coms like Hitch and How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. The best part? Pluto TV is 100% free. No credit cards, not even a sign-up. Plus, Pluto TV has hundreds of channels with thousands more movies, TV shows, and more. Download the Pluto TV app on all your favorite devices and start streaming now. Pluto TV. Drop in, watch free.
Hey guys, Michael Malice here from You're Welcome, and I'm excited to tell you about my next episode of the podcast with none other than my old sparring partner, the man who calls me Dr. Menace. Yes, the one, the only, Alex Jones.
You can't beat resistance. Resistance is victory. America has cancer. And the question is, will we stand up to it and say no?
So, if you're a fan of highly intelligent conversation hosted by dubiously intelligent people, be sure to check out the latest episode of You're Welcome with Michael Malice. That's me on PodcastOne, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever else you get your podcasts. You know what? I hear the headline, Alex Jones, aliens paid my legal bills.